Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another discography deep dive. These have been lesser and lesser on the channel. They're just hard to prepare for. Aidan and
Yeah.
I have been doing the listening for this for months and months and months. And I've actually had the listening, I think you as well had the listening done like 2 months ago, but between all these different factors,
Yeah.
things haven't worked out. But Aidan is here. You may remember him from the Quadrophenia video we did together. And today we're going to be ranking the albums of Badfinger. Um, Out of interest, how much did you know about Badfinger before doing this?
Um, I'd heard, I think the first six albums, I'd like at least once, and I think I'd listened to a few of them a bunch of times. I mean, I don't think I was like an expert about all the lore, but like I'd heard the stuff. I kind of knew what I was getting into. So like mild expertise, I guess you could say.
Well, more than me, at least. Yeah. I mean, they're kind of one of these bands that has a very infamous backstory. I probably don't need to explain it, but
Yeah.
just look at their Wikipedia and it is really depressing reading. Lots of death and getting fucked over by managers and really, really horrible history for this like really sort of sunshiny, band. And a lot of course, they have some melancholic stuff as well, but the sort of general sound is this sort of warm, comforting 70s sound. Um, so yeah, for
Yeah.
me, I'd not heard a full album, so these were all new for me. I probably knew about give or take 4 or 5 songs, like Baby Blue, No Matter What, obviously Without You, which Harry Nilsson would go on to cover. Great start to the video.
Yeah.
And I think Day After Day and Come and Get It. I think those are the songs I knew. I think everything else was new to me. So that's kind of interesting. I'll kick us off. We've got 8 albums to rank. My number 8, this shouldn't be too surprising, is their final album, Say No More, which I have as a 4 out of 10. Um, we're going to go up quite quickly after this one. I think this was a good experience to go through Badfinger. But this album, I don't know. The last album before this one, they sort of explored a sort of more AOR sound. And though I didn't love that, this is like less good. It's this more straight up rock and roll sound. It's just not that exciting. It kind of reminds me of because obviously you had like 3 songwriters in the original version of the band, and Pete Ham was to me always the one that stood out the most melodically. And sometimes the weaker tracks from those other members are just sort of like by the numbers rock and roll at times. And that is kind of this entire album because Pete Ham obviously passed away. It feels pretty uninspired and bland. Yeah, I wasn't really expecting much else, especially with no Pete Ham on there. None of the songs really stand out, apart from the ones that stand out in a bad way, like Rock and Roll Contract, which is really bad. The spoken word parts just fall really flat. Since on Three Time Loser sound like ass and not the Badfinger album. Um, there's the song No More shoots for something more psychedelic. But again, the production's flat. It doesn't really work. And then you get Crocodillo, which is just so dumb. Like, what a stupid way to end their career. It's a pretty lousy album. It's the worst of the 2 reunion albums for me, quite easily. And I'm never going to listen to it again. So 4 out of 10 for Say No More.
Yeah, not going to disagree with you there. It's my last place too. Um, yeah, I just think it's totally like run out of steam. Like even the last one, which wasn't amazing, I felt like there was a bit more energy and like effort put in. This is like very by the numbers. I can't even like remember how any of the songs go. Like it was a very kind of boring listening experience. It also, yeah, it just drags. I'm like, maybe I'll be a little nicer. I gave it a 5 out of 10. So, I mean, but that's not that much better. I mean, it's just like, it's inessential and it's unfortunately their last album is not very good. So, yeah, I don't have a ton to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's better that we just move on. And my number seven probably won't surprise people in saying that it is Airwaves from 1979. But I'm up to a six on this. I think it's pretty decent. The first album of the post Pete Ham lineup, which I don't think there's anybody who thinks that these albums were necessary. He was such an important part of the band, and to go on without him, I get it. You know, they needed money and they needed to go with the Badfinger name because they really didn't make any money as Badfinger because of all those various reasons. So I understand, but I don't really want it. You know, Look Out California is the first real song on the album. It's like this generic rock and roll, quite characterless. There's like a lack of spark on the first half of the album. But then you get Love Is Gonna Come Around, which has some like lovely jangly guitars. The chorus is a bit saccharine, but I was kind of won over by the end. The guitar solo on there is nice. Um, the winner is probably the one that dips furthest into AOR and is one of the weaker songs on the album. I think Sympathy is a pretty good song. It's just like a lot of songs where I was either neutral or like, oh, that was pretty good. Again, not very essential, and yeah, not much to keep me coming back to it apart from the couple songs that I highlighted as being good. So 6 out of 10 for Airwaves. It's decent.
Yeah, I'm still lining up with you, number seven, Airwaves. But yeah, I gave this a seven. You know, I think it's good, like it's on the edge of good. Um, it's a lot shorter than Say No More, which is a positive, and there's signs of life here. It's still got some energy. Um, but yeah, it's still just like it's not the same without Pete Ham. Like just thinking about like almost all of my favorite songs from the earlier stuff are his stuff. And it's just here, it's just not the same really. Um, but they are going for a very like you're right, it's kind of super different from a lot of their earlier stuff. It's like they've totally changed their style and even like the way they produce their albums. I guess my standout I would highlight probably Love Is Gonna Come at Last. I know that was like a single. That's very catchy. I like that. It's got a nice earworm, very kind of birdsy jangle. I think that one's cool. But other than that, and a few others that are pretty good, you know, it's not that special, but you know, it doesn't offend me, so I'll be nice.
Wow, that's good of you. Yeah. I imagine yeah, most people would have those two at the bottom, but most lists where you're going to see the difference is in the original 6 albums.
Yeah, I
Um,
imagine.
I'm not sure we may line up on this as well because I know this album isn't exactly loved. My number six is Ass, their fourth album from 1973. Um, I've also given this a six, obviously a higher six than Airwaves. I think the opening ballad, Apple of My Eye, is fantastic. I really love it. It's a great choice as an opener as well. I think the biggest flaw you can find with the album is that it just puts its best foot forward way too early, and that the rest of the songs, there are some other good ones, but none of them can really live up to that one for me. It's often considered weaker than the first three, but it definitely has like a distinct identity, which I can respect. They really truly found their own sound, I think, on Straight Up, and I think this is a continuation of that. Getaway is a fun rocker. I think Icicles is a really nice little ballad. You get songs like The Winner and Blind Owl, which I think are a bit mediocre. Pete Ham isn't on the album much. Um, Constitution is fine. It feels a bit substanceless and it doesn't really have much catchiness either. Um, you get Cowboy, which is pretty lame despite a really cool fiddle part. Yeah, after a strong start, the album does sort of live up to its reputation as a bit of a slump for the band. I think this one and the other one that came between Straight Up and Wish You Were Here are considered a bit weaker than the other four of their original run. And for this one, I definitely think that's justified. There's some cool moments, some cool instrumentation. I think they were really, as instrumentalists, they were really at the top of their game around this era. Um, and then yeah, they do Timeless at the end, which is this great big epic ballad. I think it's pretty good. to close the album. It's very different to what they'd done otherwise, and sort of kind of leads into what they would end up doing on Wish You Were Here in terms of the more progressive elements of their sound. So yeah, doesn't really live up to what's come before, obviously, because I haven't mentioned the first three albums yet. But it's a fine listen. It's close to a 7. There's just too much fluff for me to go to a 7. I think again, it's decent. Not going to listen to it again, probably. But there are some really good highlight tracks. I'm glad I did hear it to take those away from it.
Yeah, I'm still lining up with you. My number 6 is also Ass. But I'm giving this a 7 too. Yeah, I kind of agree with what you say. I do think it's a bit of a slump for them after their earlier stuff, but I do think that Apple of My Eye is such a big standout for me that that was the first song I knew from it because it's like the hit single and stuff. So I think my expectations were raised by that. Um, and I mean, the other stuff, it's not bad, but I don't think it's like amazing. There was the one Icicles, that one kind of sounds like a Holly song to me. I like that one, but and a few others I think are good. Like I like the closer with Timeless. That's a cool one. But just overall, yeah, I don't know. It's just a bit too long, a bit too like sagging in the middle. Like it doesn't quite have the punch I would like. And it does kind of feel like a step down and then they go back up a bit with the next stuff. So yeah, number 6.
Okay, we've been pretty standard so far. I've got a bit of a curveball, which people aren't going to like, but my number 5 is Wish You Were Here, their 6th album from 1974. It comes with a lot of hype, this album, I think. It's sort of considered their final swing at greatness in the face of adversity. Um, and obviously, I've not mentioned the other album they released this year yet. So I had already enjoyed that one. And then, yeah, I don't know what it was about this. I've got it as a 7. I think it's good. Um, I think the first 2 songs are actually my favorite on the album. Just a Chance, I think, really sets the album up well. And You're So Fine was actually one of the songs I knew before. Lovely and Wistful. Really like that song. I think You're So Fine wouldn't feel out of place as the music to a montage in an early Wes Anderson movie. And that's a compliment. Early Wes Anderson's great. You know, and then yeah, Got to Get Out of Here. Not that great at the 3 hole. IMO. No One Knows is okay. Doesn't really compare to those first 2 songs for me. The album feels quite stripped back in a lot of ways, and I'd really enjoyed the big full production sound that we got on the earlier albums, and this one does feel a bit more. I mean, it's not like a folk album or anything, but it is more just sort of acoustic guitar and electric guitar, bass, drums. That's kind of what we're dealing with in a lot of these songs. And yeah, it is stripped back, but I think the ballads on this compared to like Take It All, My Heart Goes Out, Day After Day, I don't really think they compare. Um, and I don't really understand why it's held up as like their best album by so many people. Um, I wrote in my notes, I predict Aidan will love Dennis. So we'll see. I think it's a pretty good song. The songwriting is more ambitious here in places. The conventional song structures are often abandoned, which makes for an interesting listen. It keeps you on your toes. But I do also think that they were at their best when they were keeping things grounded and simple. Um, I should probably mention, well, I forgot to, that this is the first Welsh artist that we're covering on the channel, and there is like a sort of distinct coziness, like a sort of rural coziness to a lot of their best songs, and that is kind of here, but again, that's sort of leaning more into the progressive. Works in some places and doesn't work in others. Um, in the meantime, Some Other Time is pretty much a prog song. Um, I don't think they were really, they were definitely ahead of their peers in terms of writing catchy hooks. I don't think they were ahead of their peers in terms of writing complex arrangements, because I think the arrangements on this album can be a bit drab. Love Time, though, that's exactly what I want from them. Sounds like a Beatles song. The acoustic guitar part sets it out as its own thing, though, which is really cool. And then, yeah, King of the Load, not a big fan. And then The closer, meanwhile, back at the ranch, should I smoke? Really like the vocal layering in the first part, but I don't know. I'm not as head over heels for that song as other people seem to. I know that's considered their like masterpiece by so many people, but I think it's a good song, but and it closes the album well. But yeah, it's just a sort of mixed bag for me. I really love songs like "You're So Fine." That's probably my favorite on the album. Um, but it lands at number 5 simply because I enjoyed the other albums more. So 7 out of 10 for "Wish You Were Here."
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting for us to diverge because that's my number five too. But and I'm gonna have similar things to say probably. My favorite song was the opener, Just a Chance. I think that one's just super catchy, so much energy, just shoots out of the album like a cannon. I really love that song. And then you were right. I think Dennis is great too. That's my second favorite on the album. I just love that kind of, like stately ballad type of thing. It's just a very well written song. Um, yeah, I think Love Time's great too. I really like You're So Fine, but just for me, just not as much as the other ones, I guess. And yeah, I guess to like speak on the closer with Meanwhile Back at the Ranch, it's like one of their highest rated songs on Rate Your Music. I just don't get it. Like it's not that catchy to me. I don't really see why it's like listed as like their fifth highest rated. I think it is. It's too high for me. I don't know. I get why people like it. It's like this ambitious, like sweet type of thing, but yeah, I don't know. Just not for me, but still good. I'm gonna give this album an 8 because there's a lot of great songs. Not that much for me to complain about. So like I don't really have criticisms, but just a few that I'm not as crazy about as other people.
I can't believe we've lined up so far. I would never have predicted that. Maybe this is where we diverge. My number 4 is their debut, Magic Christian Music. Another 7 out of 10 for me. Um, it's sort of touched by greatness in a lot of ways, this debut, even though it is sort of like quite scattershot and they recorded a lot of these songs earlier under a different name. But you get contributions from not just Paul McCartney, of course, which we'll get to, but also the eventual sort of titan producer for David Bowie, Tony Visconti, is here as well, which is what a combo to bring in on your debut album. It's sort of really cool. And the discography opens with the McCartney penned "Come and Get It," one of their biggest hits, and it is an absolute delight. It is not only a showcase for McCartney's unique talent for melody, but it's a real showcase for their group vocals as well, and it's immediately showing their unique vocal harmony style, which I love. And then yeah, I also really like "Dear Angie," which is a really great slower song, really really catchy, and it's got a bit of a jazzy feel, which I like. "Carry On Till Tomorrow" is this really enchanting acoustic song, and I think those are the 3 best songs on the album. There aren't any bad songs. In fact, for a lot of this album, weirdly for a debut album, I think the thing that was standing out the most was there's some really cool little guitar parts. There's some really nice vocal harmonies. It was more the sort of the parts that they were putting together rather than the songs themselves. And I think they would come a long way as songwriters from this album. And yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to say. The string arrangements from Visconti are really nice. I think it is the kind of album that could do with being trimmed. Maybe, for this style of music, this sort of like very Beatles-esque style, they hadn't really gone into the power pop fully yet. That would more come with No Dice. And I think for this kind of album, maybe 30 minutes would be a better length for it. It does get a bit samey near the end. I do think maybe Tomorrow is a good way to close. And yeah, it has some of the best songs of their career for sure, like "Come and Get It," "Dear Angie" especially. I don't really think it holds together as a full album listen as well as my top 3. But I would go back to this. I think it's a good album. Even if there are some moments that I'm not as into, it's like a pretty easy listen. Great harmonies, good instrumentation, and some real standout songs. So 7 out of 10 for Magic Christian Music.
Yeah, so we don't agree anymore, but that's okay. My number four is going to be No Dice. I think this one is a very solid album. I like most of what's going on here. I think no matter what's just like an amazing power pop, so catchy, so great. Obviously, Without You is a big one here, but it's not, the classic that's was covered. So it's like I almost wanted to, I guess minor spoiler, put it in my top 10 to recognize like how great of a song it is, but their version I don't think is great. It's like a demo. And
Yeah,
then
no,
I
sorry
I
to
think
cut across, but
oh yeah.
I just to talk about Without You, like his vocal performance on that song is so he's holding back so much. And
Yeah.
apparently that was something to do with he had a conversation with the producer where he had been like really belting some of these songs and he didn't want to do that because he'd been doing it so often. He didn't want it to become like the thing he was known for doing, which, but then it's like that version would have been so much better if he would have just put
Yeah.
more oomph into it. Like
If
when he does
there's
the,
if there's one song on the whole like
yeah,
Badfinger catalog to do that for, it should have been
yeah.
that one.
And then how he sings is just, I can't live. It's just like, he just, there's just no like, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's an okay version, but it doesn't compare to Harry's. Yeah,
There's no like, yeah, it doesn't have like grandeur or anything. Yeah, but the others, and just to talk about some other songs, I like Bloodwind a lot. I think that's a cool, like country-ish ballad. I really like We're for the Dark, like a very like a brassy closer. I think that one's really cool. There's a couple I just like the first three songs. I don't really like those that much. Um, just personally. Like they're not that catchy to me. But then it gets into Midnight Caller, which I really like, and then most of the rest of the album I think is very strong. So I just think it's kind of like a weak start, but most of the stuff I think is great, and I'd give it 8 out of 10 because I think it's pretty consistent across the board. There's a lot of great songwriting, even though in the case of Without You, it was obviously done much better later on when they put some more oomph into it. So yeah, that's what I'm going with.
I just want to say, Badfinger fans watching this are going to be like, they haven't mentioned an album that I thought would have been mentioned by now, and I'm so
Yeah,
glad that we're both stick. Yeah, this is
we
great.
saw the
This
we
is
saw the truth.
we saw the truth. Yeah. We're going to keep talking about No Dice because it's my number three as a my final 7 out of 10. This was so close to an 8. I really grapple with this one. I kind of feel the same way about you do, but I also kind of don't. I do agree that there's like a gap in quality between the best songs and the weakest songs. Um, for me, it's almost like I really love half the songs, and I could take or leave the other half, and that makes for a really confusing listening experience. I actually really like I Can't Take It. I think it is a great opener for the album. It's got this bluesy hard rock sound, which is really cool. Jeff Femrick, of course, is producing this album, and it sounds so much more professional than Magic Christian music, even though Tony Visconti was doing some cool things. The overall sound of everything here is so pristine and excellent. I Don't Mind too. It's this sort of Beatlesque ballad. I will give you that the third track, Love Me Do, probably the weakest song on the album. But then yeah, you go straight into Midnight Caller, which is this real McCartney-esque ballad, no matter what, sort of is excellent. And then it goes straight into Without You, then I think, after No Matter What, which is like crazy that they were back to back on the same album. But it's just not, I think it's a bad version, honestly. Like I don't ever need to listen to it. The verses actually sound pretty great, but the chorus is just way too restrained. It doesn't work. Blodwyn, which is Welsh for flower, is a great little bouncy country song, like you said, really catchy. Better Days, I think, is really generic, but has some cool guitar work. It Had to Be, it's cool. Watford John, pretty standard blues number, but has what I will say about the songs I don't care about that much on this album is that the vocals from all of the guys are really cool. Not just Pete Ham. I don't know the other guys' names, which is bad of me, but there's like the one guy that sings that really sort of bluesy, like sort of earthy style, which I really like as a contrast to Pete Ham. Um,
I think
and
that
then yeah,
one's. I think it's Tom Evans. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. I just drew a complete blank. um, but yeah, I think "Believe Me" is another song with some great vocals, and I agree with you. "With the Dark" is a great way to close. It's not a particularly consistent album, but there are some great songs, and it sounds really good. It would be a good headphone testing album for sure. Yeah, good stuff for the most part, but I don't know. Like to get to that eight, I needed a bit more sort of confidence and assurance in themselves, which I just don't think they had. They have some confidence in some of the material, no matter what, being the prime example. But there are times where they seem a bit apologetic, and that would be all gone by the next album. So, No Dice is number two, 7 out of 10. My last 7 out of 10.
Yeah. My number three, I've got Magic Christian Music, the debut. So this one, I think it's obviously like a very like Jekyll and Hyde album because half of these songs are like carryovers from the Ivies days and half of them are new ones. But I still think it's pretty consistent, at least in the quality. Like I think there's a lot of really good stuff here. Obviously, the opener, Come and Get It, just so good. Amazing. But honestly, my favorite on the album is probably the closer, Maybe Tomorrow. I think it's just a really pretty song, super like Beatlesy and very kind of has this melancholy but also extremely catchy, which is a great combination. Other songs I really like Dear Angie. You know, yeah, I agree with you. It's very jazzy and kind of a different, more offbeat sound. I think Crimson Ship's really cool. I really like Fisherman for some reason. Like it's kind of minimalist, but it's also super catchy, and I like that. And it's kind of has this very nice vibe throughout the album that I really like. And it's, you know, it's not pretentious or any of that. It's just good song, good song, good song, continue, continue, continue. So that's an approach I really like. And I think it's an especially pretty strong first outing for them. So I'm gonna go with an 8 out of 10 for this one. So yeah, I dig this one a lot.
This is so weird. I was convinced my list was super unconventional. I think it is, but we've just lined up so much
I
because
think
now we
mine
have
is
this.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the same top two,
Yeah.
an album you'd expect to be there and an album you wouldn't. And I wonder if we're going to line up. My number two is the self-titled album Badfinger from 1974, which I have as an 8 out of 10. This throughout my entire time doing the channel, this has got to be one of the biggest surprises, because I really wasn't expecting anything from this album. It basically has the same critical standing as Ass, where like people consider it those two albums kind of like, yeah, well, they were kind of burnt out and they weren't like at their best. I just have to disagree. I think this is it's one of those albums where I put it on and I was like, oh, this first song's good. Oh, this second song's good. And it was just like continuously, I was like shocked at how good the level of quality was. Um, I Miss You is a great opener. Um, you know, the it's a sort of like piano ballad with these amazing harmonies, and then you get Shine On, which is one of the best songs on the album. It's so awesome. Love the rhythm of it. Or again, almost a country influence, which you do feel a bit more in their discography than I would have expected, just knowing sort of the bigger songs. Um, and then the thing about this album is the only bad song on the album is the lead single, Love Is Easy, which is like the worst. Oh man, that song's bad. It's like it's like there was 90 seconds of thought put into it. It's so lousy and like half baked. But every other song on the album is great, and that was chosen as the lead single. I just don't get it. Um, Song for a Lost Friend is just classic Pete Ham. Um, Why Don't We Talk is pretty good too. There's some real conviction in the vocals there again. Um, and like, yeah, Island is this really solid rocker with some much needed energy and a very ballad heavy album. It's very like dreary. It's very like melancholic. And I can see why maybe people who loved albums like No Dice and Straight Up would have been turned off by that. But I think it's just great. It shows off some really good songwriting. Good songwriting is good songwriting, right? Matted Spam, which is one of the most ridiculous song titles, but is something completely different for them, and I think it's a welcome change. That sort of R&B influence is really cool. it's a really eclectic album in a lot of ways. Um, and I think this album has then two back-to-back songs, which are the two biggest hidden gems in their entire catalog. Where do we go from here? Being one of them. Awesome vocal, and I love the arrangement with the like really soft electric piano. It's so subtle and so understated and almost like lo-fi, but so catchy as well. It's so different to anything else they ever did. And then you get My Heart Goes Out, which is sung by the drummer Mike Gibbons, which is just an amazing song. It's so lovely and folky, such a frail, like full of character vocal performance from Mike Gibbons. It's obviously not the amazing sort of harmonies of the main singers, but he has this really relatable voice in the same way that Ringo would have when he would sing Beatles songs, right? And it is so, oh my god, it's so good. Um, and then yeah, it doesn't really let up from there. Lonely You is another great song on the second side, which I think is even better than the first side. It's just so stacked. I love the riff and the fade out. It's so meaningful and dreamy. Give It Up goes for this like super epic ballad feel, which kind of works. I like it. Um, and then yeah, there's this really cool guitar solo at the end of the song with so much feedback, and it's just really cool. I like Andy Norris too. I love the idea of the album ending on an energetic song, almost has like a Thin Lizzy vibe. Yeah, just great album. Again, sorry, Aidan, but the lead single is my least favorite. And I just love the rest of it. It's a strong 8. I think maybe I could pick holes in a couple of the production choices. It doesn't sound as good as No Dice or Straight Up, but song for song, it is just great, especially side 2. I think side 2 is just fantastic. Um, so yeah, if you've never heard the self-titled Badfinger album or you've dismissed it, check it out. It's so good. 8 out of 10.
Well, I'll just say you are completely wrong about Love is Easy. That's the best song on the album, but I'm even more insane than you. My number 2 is going to be Straight Up, honestly. So getting
I'll
into
tell
this,
you what, I respect it. I respect it.
yeah, Straight Up, I mean, I thought this would be number 1, honestly. This seemed to be easy pick for number 1, but it is super classic. Obviously, I feel like the 3 big songs on here are Baby Blue, which is just an amazing single, one of their very best. I know it was used in like Breaking Bad and stuff, but I never watched it. So I just know the song and I think it's great. Um, and Day After Day, which is just like one of the most beautiful songs ever. I think it's so good. I mean, I just love that song so much. Um, and then finally, Name of the Game, which is like a very big kind of operatic ballad type of thing, which I really love. It reminds me a bit. It's like Apple of My Eye. I like Apple of My Eye a little bit better, but this is still really great. Those two songs kind of seem similar to me. But just overall, this album has a great, consistent quality, I think, with obviously the Pete Ham songs that I just mentioned. Those are still the standouts. But song for song, it's very strong, and I'm gonna go with a 9 out of 10 because I just think pound for pound, it's got great stuff. Unfortunately and shockingly, it was not number 1. So I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, that's crazy. I thought I was gonna be the one dying on a hill here, but we're both dying. It's interesting. Our lists are so similar, but we seem to disagree on that one song, and that's it. That's the only difference. Of course, my number 1 is Straight Up, their third album from 1971, what many people consider to be the greatest year in music history. It just missed my top 10. It just missed my top 10 in 1971, which is a good job because then I didn't have to spoil anything for this video. Um, I mean, immediately from Take It All, you know you're dealing with different territory from the first 2 albums. Just an absolutely glorious ballad. The little guitar parts throughout are amazing. It's just immediately like come out with a new album, start it with one of your best songs that you've done up to that point. Just Bob's your uncle, you know? And then second track, you just up it even more with Baby Blue, which, you know, I first heard it in the finale of Breaking Bad. I know, so cliche. But yeah, it's pretty much the perfect power pop song. It's awesome. Money is the first of the tracks produced by George Harrison. Oh, and the other, so half the tracks were produced by George Harrison and half of them were produced by Todd Rundgren, which is like a crazy, like you'd expect them to sound so different to each other. But whoever recorded second did a really good job of maintaining a cohesive sound throughout the album. Um, and yeah, Money, it doesn't really sound that different to the Todd produced tracks. The central guitar riff is entrancing and has this like cool psychedelic sound. I love how this album's sequenced as well, because you have like opening on this epic ballad, then you go into this like sing along, like upbeat song, then like this psychedelic song, and then you get this transition into Flying, which is a really smooth transition, which is this lovely little piano ballad. I love the little twinkly piano outro. I Die Babe is right out of the 60s Paul McCartney songbook. Just, yeah, name of the game is like the Welsh accent gets hammed up, pun intended. And what a great ballad it is. Incredible vocal harmonies, pretty strong lyrics too. Suitcase is a bit hokey and silly, but still fun. Kind of reminds me of like Wings, even though it was pre-Wings. And then you get the delightfully folky Sweet Tuesday Morning, Day After Day, great ballad. You know, Leon Russell and George Harrison make the song, to be honest. I mean, the song is already great, but that they just add an extra element to it. And yeah, the rest of the album's good too. It's got this like blend of power pop and 60s pop and a bit of sort of more rockin' stuff. So yeah, it's probably an album that anyone could enjoy. And that I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that because it's so good, not because it's like lowest common denominator. Um, just and yeah, the standout tracks are pretty obvious, but that doesn't really matter when the rest of the songs are also great. Like the bar that the single set is so high, but the rest of the songs are still great too. So it's an easy 9 for me, and definitely the highlight of the discography, in my opinion. But Aidan disagrees somehow.
Yeah. Okay, so my number one, self-titled Badfinger. This was very surprising to me because, obviously no one really talks about this album, but I put it on and like every song was good. It was very surprising. But yeah, you're totally wrong about Love Is Easy. That's the best song on the album. It's so catchy, so much hook. It's so like I can hum it in my head all the time. So it's like that's a great song. I really like the opener, I Miss You. It's a little like it's almost cheesy, but it's like it's so played straight that it totally works. Like it's on the verge of becoming kind of like not great, but because they play things totally straight with the emotion, I think it's awesome. And then going into Shine On, that one kind of reminds me of like a Birds or a Monkey song. It kind of has a 60s vibe, very easygoing. The best song on the album is Next. And then Song for a Lost Friend is also very good. Also nice like jangle and very hooky with that one. And then it just keeps going, and there are just great song after great song. I think my favorite song on the second side would have to be Matted Spam. That's just an amazing, like funky. It goes so hard. Like I love the sax and the way it plays off of the like chicken scratch guitar. And that's just a great song. And I guess now is a good time for me to bring up like Pete Ham sounds like Paul McCartney so much to me on all of these albums. Like, and that one especially was sticking out to me. Like his inflections and the way he like raises the pitch mid note. It's very similar, but it's great either way. So it's like great singer sounding like a great singer. I'm cool with that. So just a great album. I'm going 9 out of 10. And one of the best maybe of 74, honestly. That's kind of a weak year, so this may be one of the best of that crop of stuff.
Yeah, Peter Ham definitely has McCartney inflections and stuff for sure. I think his tone is quite different, which I think is what sets
Yeah,
him apart from McCartney, which is cool. So there
Welsh
you have it.
McCartney.
There you have it. Badfinger fans, let us know how crazy you think we are. I honestly, after that recording session, I just want to re-listen to the self-titled album. That's all I want to do. So yeah, let us know what you think of Badfinger. Let us know your rankings. We will be shortly recording a songs video to go along with this. I'm intrigued to see how to what extent we line up there. And yeah, if there are any other Welsh bands you want us to cover, let us know. And hopefully we will catch you soon.